Hey folks, it's Rico, and we're back with another podcast, the Rico and Declan College Football Show with your host Rico. Declan is sleeping in his crib, so we are not going to have him on this show for tonight. It's very late; it's 11:05 at night, but I do want to talk about a lot of college football news, um, but more so about the new coaches and where they're heading and what they've done in the past and what my thoughts are about these new coaches going to new schools. And we'll go from there. I'm going to go over some big names, but not the smaller ones. Um, but I want to talk about this that came up. I was reading this off of ESPN. NCAA to discuss 5-year eligibility proposal, reports say. Listen, I'm not a fan of the 5-year eligibility. I think after 4 years, you should be done. There's so many problems with the transfer portal. I've addressed this before in episode 1. And to say to a player or college student, whatever you want to call them, that you get 5 years eligibility when you should just get 4, that's just, it's making the system more complicated. And I do like the fact that the NCAA football is different from NCAA basketball, whereas NCAA basketball now it's like the Wild Wild West. You have guys that played in the G League that are now eligible to play in college basketball. It doesn't make any sense. That's like saying if a guy didn't, work out in his first 1 or 2 years in the league, NFL, or the player played in the CFL or played in arena football. Hey, we're going to allow you to get a second chance if you didn't, finish your 5-year eligibility. I like the fact that when it was 4 years, it was 4 years, and then if you were transferring, you had to sit out a year or redshirt a year. So I don't like 5 years. I think that's too much, and I hope they fix it because if they're asking for more, that it's opening the door for more issues, in my opinion. But I'm going to go over the coaching hires. I didn't do this in episode 1. I wanted to go over that in episode 1, but we just ran out of time. I was just rambling about random games from the season. But let's go into my phone. And the first one I'm going to go over is Lane Kiffin going over to LSU. Now, I'm not a Lane Kiffin guy. I think he's a snake. I think he's a guy that cannot be trusted. Do I think it's going to work out in LSU? No, I don't. Do I think it's as good of a hire as Brian Kelly was supposed to be? I think it's better, but LSU always has to compete against Alabama, always has to compete against Georgia. Those are the two juggernauts of the SEC. And I feel like they've played second fiddle for a bit now since they won the national championship in 2019, which was, in my opinion, the greatest college football team ever. And I'm going to go over some retro teams in the next couple of weeks since the news it's very minimal until let me check this out. Just hang on one second. National Signing Day. I think that already passed. Yeah, it was on February 4th. I'm really behind on my scheduling, but yeah, I don't like the fact that LSU hired him. I thought he was going to stay with Ole Miss. I thought he would be loyal to Ole Miss, but the guy's a clown, and he's just a weird dude, man. I think he's a good coach. I think he can motivate LSU to be a better team than they were with Brian Kelly. I think he's better than Brian Kelly, but again, you're going against Alabama and Georgia every year. Those are better schools, and looking at his record, I'm just going to go over this on my phone. I'm not organized, as you can see. I'm trying to get the hang of this. This is episode 2, so we're getting better and better each time. So Kiffin went 55-19 at Ole Miss. He really put them on the map, made them a juggernaut, made them a playoff team this past year, and they went all the way over to the I think it was the Sugar Bowl. I know they lost against Miami, but actually no, they won the Sugar Bowl. What am I saying? They lost to Miami in the next round after that, and Um, he was the architect of that school, and when you look at his record, 55-19, that's very impressive. He was 32-17 in the SEC. I think that he will win more games at LSU, but at the same token, I don't see him winning a national championship. And he doesn't strike me as an X and O guy. He's not the smartest coach in my opinion. I think there's better coaches out there. Do I think they made the right hire with Lane Kiffin? Yes and no. When he went to Tennessee, it didn't work out. And then he revived his career with FAU, of all schools. I'm looking at that past record. He was 26-13 at FAU, 18-6 in the conference, which they were in Conference USA at the time. And then at Ole Miss, he won 3 bowl games and lost 2. He lost the Sugar Bowl in 2021 and lost the Texas Bowl. Texas Bowl is just, it's a pointless bowl game, and I think they're going to get rid of it eventually. But winning the Peach Bowl, that was a highlight for him, and then taking Ole Miss to the playoff, that was also very impressive. But again, I think that he's going to do something stupid. He could get involved in a scandal. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets involved in a scandal. The guy is always posting photos of himself at a yoga studio with his shirt off. Like, what are you trying to prove, man? You're close to 60. Like, come on. So I think he's an idiot. I think he'll last 4 or 5 years. I'm going to give this coach hire for LSU a B-. I think he's a good coach, but you have to deal with his drama. You have to deal with his antics, and he's not trustworthy. He wasn't trustworthy with Ole Miss. He wasn't trustworthy with USC and Tennessee. It's like that is the guy. That's his MO. That he's a snake. So I'll give LSU B- on that coaching hire. All right, next up, let me get on my phone. John Summerall. John Summerall going over to Florida. I like this hire. I think he's way better than the previous head coach, who was. I'm sorry, I've been blanking, folks. I'm exhausted. I just came off from a hockey game. Who was fired last season? Billy Napier. Billy Napier, he did a phenomenal job at Troy. And he's going to go back to the Sun Belt Conference, going over back to JMU. And he could definitely win more games at JMU because he knows the conference better, he knows the area better. He's a great recruiter, but not a good X and O's coach. And as for Summerall, he's a huge motivator. And the fact that he's already said to Florida players, you got to earn your logo on that helmet from practicing. Like, he's tough. He's a tough-nosed coach. I actually like him more than Lane Kiffin. He's more likable. He had to deal with that tragedy of his dad died during the season. He was able to persevere through that. And Tulane was a huge competitor in the American Conference. They won the American Conference, and they all, they defeated a very good North Texas team. Yes, it was the American Conference. It's different than the SEC. The SEC is a whole different monster. But if you want a guy that can motivate his players, get them to play every game ready to go, John Summerall's your guy. And I think that this hire is an A-. And I'm not a Florida fan. I'm a Florida State fan. I went to Florida State from 2014 to 2017. I hate UF. I can't stand the Gators. But I respect this hire. I like John Summerall. I've always liked him. And I even just noticed this. I'm reading up on this. He was actually the coach at Troy before he went over to Tulane. He went 23-4 at Troy, and then he was 14-2 in the conference, and then he was 14-2 in the American Conference. So the guy wins everywhere he goes. And I don't think that's going to be anything different in Florida. Yes, it's going to take some time for them to grow. They're coming off a bad year. They're coming off a year where all their main players are transferring. It's different. But I do think Napier was not the right coach for them. He wasn't a huge motivator. He was a great recruiter. But some of these recruits he recruited, they didn't pan out. Whereas Summerall, he knows what he's doing. He's going to be right there with Coach of the Year honors, I think, in a few years. I would see a huge turnaround with Florida football, give them 2 to 4 years. And I don't know what his contract is. I should look into details with that, but I'm not doing that. I'm just giving grades. And I give this hire an A- because Summerall's he's the right guy. I mean, he's better than most coaches. All right, next up. It's fine. I took pictures, snapshots of these coaches going to new places, and I know from right off the bat. So next up, we got Matt Campbell. And Matt Campbell, sorry about that. That's my dog, Lexi. She's getting up, I think. Matt Campbell was the head coach at Iowa State. He's going to Penn State. I'm not a Matt Campbell guy. I think he's overrated, and all these guys he's getting to go to Penn State, to transfer over, they're basically Iowa State 2.0 or Iowa State in Penn State. So do you think that's going to really do the Nittany Lions any favors? Is that going to make them a competitor in the Big Ten? No. I think they're going to be middle of the pack. They could go 8-5. But they can also go 6-6. And I just don't see the upside of Matt Campbell. I think that he's overrated. I know he was rumored with the Jets a few years back, and he rejected the job, or I know they at least interviewed him, and I was like, why are they interviewing Matt Campbell? And he was younger at the time. But when you look at his track history over at Iowa State, the only successful years he had was with Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy is a very good NFL QB when he's healthy. He gets hurt a lot. But he won the Fiesta Bowl in 2020. They went 9-3, 8-1 in the Big 12 Conference. I think that's a formality. That was during the COVID season. You had no fans in the stands. There was no pressure. And, yeah, that's a successful year for Iowa State football. They'll take the Fiesta Bowl. But the next year, when they went back to having fans in the stands, they go 7-6, 5-4. They lose the Cheez-It Bowl. And then in 2022, they go 4-8, 1-8 in the conference. He could have lost his job, but they kept up with him. I think they had a lot of problems with the transfer portal, and guys were leaving. And then he went 7-6 in 2023, 6-3 in the conference. And then 2024, 11-3, 7-2 in the conference. And then they lost to Arizona State, and Arizona State manhandled them. That was a huge butt whooping. It was crazy. So I don't think Matt Campbell is the right guy for Penn State. I think they panicked and they wanted to get other guys, but those guys weren't available. And the thing is with James Franklin, I'm going to go over that hire for Virginia Tech. I think Franklin's a better coach than Matt Campbell. I think you're taking a step back by getting a guy that overachieved in 2020, and he hasn't really done much since then. Yes, he did well in 2024, but then Arizona State exposed them. They made them look weak. And before that, he coached at Toledo. That's in the MAC conference. Like, the MAC conference is a joke. So, and his Big 12 record was 50-40. His head coach record at Iowa State overall 72-55. So he's over 500% with his win totals, but he's not consistent. He'll have one good year, and then the next season they stink. And I'm sorry, Rocco Beck, he's going to probably be the new QB for Penn State. He's transferring from Iowa State with Campbell. I just don't think he's the right guy. And I've never been a Rocco Becht guy. I think he folds in pressure situations. I remember watching that first game of the season on week 0, which was in Dublin, which was so stupid. I think that they should get rid of college football games over in Ireland. I love Ireland. I'm Irish myself, but get rid of college football in Ireland. There's no point to it. But anyways, Rocco Becht played terrible that game. He fumbled the ball, I think it was like 2 or 3 times, and he had 2 picks. He played terrible. And yeah, the conditions sucked, but still, like, he's not the guy. He's not going to lead them to a Big Ten championship. And I would like to get Penn State fans' take on this. Do you think you guys regress? Because I think you did. I think you got a coach that is not as good as the coach you had before. And Campbell is not a good recruiter. He gets hardworking players, but they're not flashy. Yeah, it might be Bryce Hall, but that's it. And I think James Franklin is a much better coach. And so I give this hire of Matt Campbell to Penn State a C-. I think this is not a good hire. All right, let's go on to the next coach. All right, we got the coach of UCLA Bruins, and that is Chesney. What's his name? Bob Chesney? Yeah, Bob Chesney. All right. I'm sorry, folks. I'm off on my names tonight. It's been a long night. I only got 3 hours of sleep last night because I played hockey and kept me awake. But here I am doing another podcast for y'all. And so if I mess up on names or I need to check names, just bear with me. Bob Chesney. I love Bob Chesney. And I think he's an underrated coach. Now, I only watched one JMU game. I don't watch the Sun Belt Conference. I watched the Sun Belt Conference Championship. I thought that was entertaining. And what I noticed from JMU, they had a very intense defense. Their offense was a mixture of run and pass. They had a dual threat QB. And Chesney had them playing hard. And I think that he was doing a terrific job with this JMU team. He went 21-6 and 12-4 in the conference. He was 9-4 in his first season, and then 12-2 the next season, and they went undefeated in the conference. They dominated the Sun Belt Conference, and then they won their conference championship. And then, as we all know, they played against Oregon. I didn't really watch that game. I was sick, actually. I had the flu, and I was trying to stay up for it. And I passed out on my couch, and I was like, you know what? I know who's going to win this game. It's not even going to be close. And I was right. And I think everyone else, including Vegas, predicted Oregon to win. This guy knows how to win. Even though he lost in the college football playoff, he was way overmatched against a good Oregon team. He went 44-21 at Holy Cross, and then 28-4 in the conference. Yes, that's not the same level as it's not the same level as these power conferences, but still, like, he knows how to win. He knows how to motivate his players. And I think the dilemma with UCLA, though, is that they're in the Big Ten. When they were in the Pac-12, they were somewhat competitive and somewhat marketable. Now, like, you're trying to get recruits from Ohio State. You're trying to steal recruits from Oregon. You're trying to steal recruits from Penn State. There's all these other schools that they're trying to get people from, and it's hard. I think that they are in a situation where they're middle of the pack, if not the lower half of the Big Ten. Now, do I think he's a better coach than Deshaun Foster? Yeah, Deshaun Foster was never a head coach. He had no head coaching experience, and I think that was a huge dilemma with the UCLA Bruins, and they didn't really, I guess you could say, didn't do the research when they hired Deshaun Foster. Because what I read from reports, Foster didn't really have game plans, and he really didn't have um, any sort of game plan adjustments, and they got dominated. Um, they were not good at all under his leadership. And then when they got the interim coach, they defeated Penn State at home, and they were somewhat competitive, but like they still finished with a bad record. So Chesney has to start off from scratch. He has to get recruits. He has to get transfers. And so this is a bit of an uphill climb. I don't think it's going to work out initially. Like, give him maybe 3 years, and maybe in year 3, if it's not working, then you can say, okay, well, Bob, thank you for your help and support, but we're going to have to look for someone else. But it's hard, man. Like, they didn't even get fans in their attendance, and they played in the Rose Bowl. But then the Rose Bowl says, okay, well, you're not drawing fans. We're going to cancel our lease with you. So now they're going to have home games at SoFi Stadium where the Rams and Chargers play. That's not a college football environment. That's a pro-style environment. So I don't know. I'm rooting for the guy. I hope he does well with UCLA, but I just don't think it's an ideal situation. And if he took a smaller school, like let's say, for instance, he went over to I'm trying to think of a school that needed a coach. North Texas, because Eric Morris left for Oklahoma State. I'm going to go over that shortly. If he left for North Texas, I think that would have been a good lateral move. Because when you go to UCLA, yes, you're coming from JMU, which is in the Sun Belt. You're going to a bigger conference, and you're going to be a small fish in a big pond. Whereas when he was at JMU, Chesney, he was the big fish in a small pond. And I don't know. I get it. It's because of money. He got more money from UCLA than he got in JMU they could ever dream of. But if you're loyal to your school and you build a powerhouse, yeah, maybe you won't win in the college football playoff, but you'll make it every year. That's my philosophy. It's kind of like I know this is college basketball. I'll talk about it. Dusty May. So Dusty May took an FAU team in 2023 to the Final Four. Or was it 2024? I think it was 2023. I might be mistaken. But I remember that run because I live not that far away from the FAU campus, which is in Boca. And he then left FAU a couple seasons later for the Michigan job. And he was dominant with FAU, but I was like, at first I was like, oh, okay, you might not have the same success as you did in FAU. Well, I was sure as heck wrong about that, and he won a national championship a few days ago. So I think that what Chesney is doing is good, but do I think it's going to work out? I'm not sure. It's like a 50-50 call here. I'm going to say the hire is a B because he knows how to win. From what I've heard, he's a good recruiter, but again, you're going into a situation where you are going to be in the lower half of the Big Ten. You will not be able to compete with the big boys like Ohio State and Oregon. I just don't see it. I think that UCLA is worse than Minnesota, for instance. Minnesota always competes. Actually, Wisconsin, I think, is better than UCLA, which was weird because UCLA I think they had more wins than Wisconsin, or maybe they had the same amount of wins. I don't know, but I do think that this job is not the best move for Chesney. And I get it, he did it for the money, but still. So I give that a B. All right, we got Eric Morris. So Eric Morris, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's just going to keep getting better. And with Oklahoma State, they had to start off from scratch because they fired Mike Gundy, and it was not even, I think it was like 3 or 4 games into the season. It was very early on. Like the Gundy, Oklahoma State dynamic, it was breaking apart. And so he's gone. And now they get Eric Morris from North Texas. What Morris has done with North Texas is he's built them up. Like, I'm looking at his record here. He didn't do well his first 2 seasons there. He was 5-7, 6-7 those first 2 seasons. And then in 2025, last year, he went 11-2, and they were 7-1 in the conference. And they went all the way up to the American Football Conference Championship where they lost to Tulane. They just ran out of steam, and their running back got hurt. But they're getting that running back. They're getting the QB. I like to look up the roster. Hang on 1 second. Because out of these teams, I think Oklahoma State is going to shock people. I think they're going to be good. And I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but they can win 8, maybe 9 games because you have one of the best QBs in the transfer portal. And, oh my gosh, hang on 1 second. I'm trying to look up their roster. There's the running backs. I mean, you have I don't understand why they don't have the QBs listed here. Maybe I gotta look it up. Yeah, I'm looking at their depth chart here. I see running backs. Oh, here we go. They're showing the, well, that's really weird. So I'm on ESPN, and I'm looking at the rosters, and they don't have, hang on 1 second. This thing is so outdated, man. Drew Mestamaker, yeah, I totally forgot about him. So Drew Mestamaker, he is not showing on the active roster. I don't know why. Maybe they need to update it, but Mestamaker is better than Sam Levitt. I know Sam Levitt is going over to LSU, and people are like, "Oh, he's going to be amazing with Lane Kiffin." Sam Levitt is a snake, man. He betrayed Michigan State, and he betrayed Arizona State. And the thing is with this guy too, he gets hurt a lot. He gets hurt a lot. Whereas Mestamaker, he just balls out. He threw, I think it was 47 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look up his stats. He threw for 34 touchdowns. I am so off on stats right now, folks. Just bear with me. Again, this is episode 2. We are not experts at stats right now. But I will say this. He led all of college football in passing yards with 4,379. That is insane. And this is a kid that didn't start in high school. Insane, absolutely insane. And he's just going to get better. He's a pro-style QB. And then they have the running back. And it is, what's his face? Caleb Hawkins. Yeah, Caleb Hawkins is so underrated. And with those two offensive weapons, they can compete. Do I think they're going to get a Big 12 championship? No, but when Mestamaker and Hawkins are juniors, and it's their last year before they're eligible for the draft, and I think they will go in the draft to declare after that year, they can be a Big 12 champion. I do think that. Because Morris, he's a very good coach with the X and O's. Now, their defense, I think, is atrocious. I got to look at their defense. I got to look at their defensive analytics. But from what I've heard and seen, their defense is terrible. And I also know this, too, because one time I was doing my college football picks, and I actually picked them to beat Oregon in Oregon. That might be the most stupid pick ever. I think it was week 2, and Oregon ran them off the field. It was not even close. But I do think that Mestamaker and Hawkins can drive them to 8 wins. I have to look at their schedule, but I do think this hire is better than Lane Kiffin going over to LSU. I don't know. I feel like the Big 12 is always going to play little brother to the SEC, the Big 10, but I do think the Big 12 is better than the ACC. I know that Miami made it to the national championship and represented the ACC, but I just, that's how I feel. And I've watched countless games in both conferences, and I will say that to the day I die. I think the Big 12 is a better conference than the ACC. But I think Morris, he made the right call. He went to a school that's rebuilding, but they could get back on top because they are a house name program. Now, they're not as prevalent as Oklahoma in the SEC, but you can still get great recruits out of Oklahoma. You can get great recruits out of Texas like he did with Mestemaker. And I think Hawkins was from Texas too. I mean, he knows how to recruit, and he's an offensive genius. So to have that combo, it's going to just watch in a couple of years. Not this year, I think. They could shock people, and I think they could win 8 games, but maybe 7. But the third year, when Hawkins and Mestemaker are juniors, they're going to win a Big 12 championship. I honestly think that. That's my opinion. So I'm going to give this hire of Eric Morris an A. I think it's an underrated hire. I think he's just going to get better. He's a young coach too. You know, that's a good hire. All right, next up we got Alec Golesh. Alec Golesh, he did an incredible job with USF. Alex Golesh. Oh my gosh, I am so bad with names. Alex Golesh. Folks, I am so sorry. I'm still getting the hang of this. This is episode 2. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make errors. We're going to do typos. We're going to do spelling errors. Just bear with us. Alex Golesh. I think Alex Golesh is an underrated coach. He beat Florida in Florida in week 2 with USF. And he has a great QB in Brown. And I think the running back had a good year. They have him coming over to Auburn with him. So Auburn did a great job with this hire because Auburn always flies under the radar. And not too long ago, 12 years ago, they were playing for a national championship against my Knowles. So it's not impossible to say that Auburn can compete for a national championship with Golesh as the coach in like 3 or 4 years. I'm a little crazy with that, but Auburn, I don't know, man. They fly under the radar. They play close games against Alabama because of that great Iron Bowl rivalry. It's one of the best in the sport. I would love to go to a game in the future, especially if I get to cover it with my content. But I don't know. I mean, I think that Alex Golesh is a huge motivator. And when you got a guy who can motivate, he's a great recruiter too. Very defensive-minded. I feel like his defenses have played good under him. Now, they should have won the American Conference and they fizzled out, but they will compete in the SEC. It's going to take some time. I don't think it's going to happen in year 1. I don't think it's going to happen in year 2. But you give him a third year, that third year he could break through the wall. And it's hard because you got to compete against Alabama. You got to compete against Georgia. You could even say that now Vandy is going to be a competitor because the NIL and they're getting so much money and resources dedicated to the sports programs. But Auburn will be right there in a couple years. Give them some time. I like this hire a lot. I'm going to give it an A- because it could take him some time. You have to be patient. I know Auburn fans are waiting for a winner and they're growing impatient. I get it. I can't imagine how that feels. I mean, I'm a Florida State fan. I know how that feels, sort of, but we won an ACC championship not too long ago and then got steamrolled by Georgia. I don't want to talk about that, but I like this hire a lot. So Golesh, I'm going to give you an A-. All right, next up, we got James Franklin. All right, so James Franklin, I'm going to talk about his Penn State career because it's most recent. He went, hang on, folks. I'm having a little technical difficulties here. So he went 104-45. 104-45 as an overall record at Penn State. And a lot of people will say James Franklin underachieved. he went 64-36 in the Big Ten. And the problem with James Franklin at Penn State, he could never beat Ohio State. I think he beat them like twice in his tenure there, but he was there for a while. He was there from 2014 to 2025. He was there for 11 years. And I think Penn State fans, they were really ragging on him last year. But you have to look at the situation. He had so many injuries, including Drew Aller, and there were guys who underachieved, especially. But the injuries, they just piled up, and I think that was the major problem at hand. They had some transfers that didn't work out, like that Syracuse wide receiver. He did terrible for them. So, like, it was just a bad season. And I think to say, okay, we're going to cut the cord on you, dude, after he took you to the playoffs the year prior, and they were a field goal away from going to the national championship to meet up with Ohio State. Like, I'm just not understanding that at all. And now he's going to Virginia Tech, which is a rebuilding program in the heart of the ACC. I think he could do a lot of things at Blacksburg. I really do. I think he's a great recruiter. He took a lot of his players from Penn State and they transferred over to Virginia Tech. But the name of the game is recruiting. And Franklin knows how to recruit. Now, the transfer portal, that is suspect. I think he could do a better job with that, but like a lot of coaches could do better in the transfer portal. It's a process. And if you're not used to it, it's going to take some time. I think the coaches who are more acclimated with it are better with it. And with him, he didn't hit any home runs with that. But again, I think that going to Blacksburg is a better suited program for him. They're not going to be as nitpicky as the Nittany Lion fans are. I think they're just too hard on their coaches, and they want to have Joe Paterno 2.0. I don't like the guy, and I can talk about that another time, but I'm going to stick to the subject. James Franklin is an underrated coach. And to rag on him and say, oh, he didn't do a good job last year. Yeah, well, look at the roster. And I think they're going to regret that. I think Matt Campbell, like I said before earlier in this show, is a huge downgrade compared to James Franklin. Franklin knows how to win. Yeah, he did beat Ohio State. Yeah, he lost some big games. But you know what? He got you into the playoff a year ago, and you were a field goal away from a national championship berth against Ohio State. I think they would have lost to Ohio State, but still. And then you fire him the next year. I don't know. I think that was stupid. So I'm going to give this hire for Virginia Tech an A. And watch out, Virginia Tech, give them some years. I think 2 years they could be playing for an ACC championship. The ACC is so wide open, dude. I mean, we had Virginia against Duke in the ACC championship, and then Duke won that, and in overtime. It's really anybody's conference because Clemson, they're not good anymore. I'm confident enough to say that. They used to be big old scary Clemson. They're not good anymore. And that's because Dabo doesn't know how to adapt. He doesn't use the transfer portal. He thinks sticking with recruits is going to work. It does somewhat, but not as much as it used to. You have to use NIL, you have to use your resources, and you have to use the transfer portal. I mean, that's a fact. All right, I think that we are done. Yep, we are done, folks. So just as some heads up with future shows, I'm looking to do at least one episode a week now. I am going to cover old-time college football teams. I'm just going to go into stats and stuff like that and talk about teams that were underrated or fly under the radar in general because it's interesting to me. But if more news shows up, I mean, the only news that I felt was noteworthy to talk about was the 5-year eligibility proposal. So I'm not a fan of that, obviously, but that was the only new news that I knew about. Now, next episode, we're going to go over notable transfers and how I think they'll do and perform in their new schools. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll be doing a new episode in the future. Peace out.